Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday, and welcome to Rising Women in HR. I'm your host, Jen Trum. So before we jump into the interview today, I wanted to share with you guys a breakthrough that I had this week. So earlier this week, I was doing a live, and during the live, I started to have doubts. And I started to have worries and I started to question myself. And okay, before I go any further, I just want to say also disclose that this live today is really about being vulnerable. And one thing that I really want to be vulnerable about is my imposter syndrome. And so that was what was happening yesterday, or no, 2 days ago during my live. So during my live, I started to just doubt and question myself. And as that happened, I was kind of spinning for a few moments, and then all of a sudden I caught myself. And when I caught myself, I then said to myself, stop. You are feeling an emotion right now. It is not a problem unless you decide that it's a problem, right? And as soon as I said that, I took a deep breath in. And then I continued with my presentation while I was really not feeling a great emotion, because imposter syndrome, however it shows up with the doubts and the worries and the questioning and the self-judgment and all of that, right? Like, it doesn't feel good. And so I am learning slowly to be able to push through that yuck and really say, no, I'm being intentional right now in how I want to show up, and I'm being intentional about what I want to believe about myself. I'm intentional about what I want to think about myself, and that is pretty massive. So a little bit later in the afternoon that day, I went back and I sat with it again, and I said to myself, like, this isn't such a bad thing, right? Like, I can feel this, but why is it coming up for me? What is it really about, right? And what I realized is, like, an even bigger breakthrough for me was that the imposter syndrome is really because I don't yet fully believe in myself at the current level I'm at in my life, right? Whether it's, I've been promoted or new job or something like that. So imposter syndrome is going to show up because your brain doesn't yet fully believe it. So it's going to try to talk you out of it. It's going to try to have you, thinking doubts and worries and, become insecure and all of that. And so the key is to be able to recognize that, and to be able to recognize that there is a story either way, right? There's a story that we can tell when we start feeling imposter syndrome about how we're not good enough, and maybe we shouldn't be here and all of that. And then there's a story we can tell ourselves when we feel that imposter syndrome, that no, I can do this, right? That is just an emotion. It's just something that is uncomfortable, but it's a part of life. It's a part of how we live as humans. So I just wanted to really offer that to all of you today, to be able to say that imposter syndrome is absolutely okay. Imposter syndrome is really only a problem when we decide it is. And so I want to offer anyone who is interested a quick meet and greet call. I've got 5 different tips that I think could really help if you struggle with imposter syndrome. So, okay, with that, I am excited to share my interview with Geree Jackson. We had such a great conversation, and I am really, really excited for you to see it. And I will be back at the end to just do a little bit of a wrap up and takeaways. All right, so here we go. Okay, where is it? Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode of Women of HR Support Series. I am so excited to be here with Geree. Hey, Geree, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Jen.
Oh, good. Good. Well, I am so excited to have you here, and I would love it if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit about where you're from, what you do, family, all of that good stuff.
Absolutely. Let me first pause to say thank you so much for having me. I'm elated to share my experiences, best practices, where I've come from, and how I can help others on their trajectory with regards to their career. First and foremost, let's talk about who Geree is. Geree is a woman of faith. Jeree's married to Dr. Jackson. Between our union, we have 6 adult children, and I have 4 grandkids. And then my husband has a grandbaby on the way. Yay! I'm so elated. I love to travel. I love to help others. I love public speaking. My passion is for people. And so anytime I get an email or a text message, I quickly scurry to respond, because I know that if anybody is reaching out to me, they're asking for assistance. So that is who I am. I love to help people. It is who I am as a woman of faith. And I also throw my counseling hat, because in the world where we are today, it is our new normal. And I see where people are struggling emotionally, mentally, physically, and psychologically. So anything that I can do to help with regards to resources, I certainly want to be able to offer them.
Yeah, amen to that. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. So what is your role currently? Tell me a little bit about your trajectory within human resources.
Absolutely. So I've been in human resources for almost 33 years, human resources and program management in the for-profit sector, nonprofit, higher education, K through 12 education, you name it. I started at the bottom and worked my way up. Initially, I did not go into human resources. When I went to college at the University of Florida, I started with criminal justice courses because I wanted to do something in that area. Well, after my first semester, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to take a different route. And that's when I started business administration courses. And from that point forward, that's all I've been doing. And so I have my undergrad in business administration management. I have a master's in counseling. I have my master's in business administration. I have my master's in human resource management. And I also went to, yes, the lone life learner here. But I also went to Walden University and started my doctoral degree. I have a year and a half under my belt, but I will tell you, I had to take a step back to ask myself, what will I do with that doctoral degree? And so as I started to handle legal aspects for various companies, I said, you know what? My degree from a legal standpoint will serve me well in the arena that I'm working in, human resources. So I will be starting law school come January. I have 2 schools, have not decided which one I want to go to, but please know that I'll be finished and I will have the JD behind my name sooner than later. And so speaking about my HR career, it is my passion. Again, I started at the bottom and I worked my way up to the executive level. Back in 2016, I felt the need to establish my own business, and I tell you why. Some of the companies that I've worked for, in terms of dealing with certain leaders, oftentimes they didn't understand the dynamics of human resources. They will always ask, well, why do you have to do it that way? The policy states this, but you're telling me this way. What is the correct way? And so educating the senior leaders and the managers and the frontline supervisors on policies and procedures, interpreting the policies and procedures for them. Anytime any of their employees would commit an infraction, they would come to me for guidance. And some of the things were egregious in nature, and they did not want to terminate the employees. Well, you had other employees that saw that same behavior and they questioned that. And so what you do for one, you have to do for the other. So handling the whole diplomacy, the tact, and dealing with managers was one of my most intricate tasks early on in my career, back in the 90s, early on, I would say 91. At that moment, I had to take a step back and ask myself, am I going to be on the winning team, or I'm going to allow them to win? And I had to say, you know what? This is my profession. I'm going to continue to take a stand. I'm going to be their business partner, and I'm always going to tell them that why. Give them information with regards to court cases, citing court cases, sharing with them, this is the why you shouldn't do it, because one, you will put the company in a litigious situation where they're going to be charged with the EEOC charge because we did not follow our policies and we violated employment or discrimination laws. So that was a challenge for me, I will say. But from that, what I learned was to continue on my trajectory, continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to know more so that I can effectuate what I needed to, from a successful standpoint. When I'm sitting around the table, I'm meeting with key leaders.
Nice. And now you do more consulting, right? So now you're kind of out of the corporate world and doing your own thing. Talk to that a little bit.
I sure will. So anytime any individual can start their own business, I would say run for it. There are so many resources out there through the Small Business Administration, through different companies within the state that individuals live. I would say tap into resources, because that is what I did. I have consulted for many companies on the HR side and the legal side, helping them, come out of a professional employer organization, helping companies with no HR department get started with policies and procedures, helping them with documents that they didn't have in place, facilitating training and development with their senior leaders and mid-level managers, doing staff and manager retreats with them, showing them truly what it's like to have an HR professional working in their corner. So having said all of that, I commanded, my position because it was my business. I was able to effectuate things from my company. I can say no to an employer based on the information they presented in the meeting, or I can say, yes, I would love to work for you. So I got to pick and choose who I wanted to work with. And I think that's a win-win, because the conversation, I would say that initial conversation, when you ask them the who, what, when, where, how, and why, you're sitting around the table having that conversation with a senior leader, and they're telling you certain things, and it's like an aha moment. Is this something that I want to dive into? Because it may be very challenging to get them to understand the bigger picture. And I never, ever want to waste my time helping a company effectuate their human resources, policies and procedures, or all facets of human resources for that matter.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what a blessing that is, right? To be able to get to a point where you can be choosy and picky when it comes to the employers that we work with. And so many of us out there right now are watching this going, well, here I am. I'm kind of stuck with the same old employer. But, I think regardless of if it's as a consultant or as an employee, I think being picky and choosy, I think there's so much that we don't really put as much weight as we could. I think so often we look at the employer-employee relationship, and if employer is going to call you and did they pick me, and
Right.
Not really recognizing, hey, this is every much a part of you choosing them as them choosing you. So I think it can go both ways, as a consultant, as an employee. So for those out there who are working as employees saying, oh, I want that, you can definitely have that. It's just a matter of like building that confidence and really knowing what it is you want and what you need, and going for it.
Absolutely. And let me just say further that the leaders that I've met with, I've asked questions surrounding their culture. What do they want their culture to represent? Right. I've even gone in, I've done focus group sessions. Some companies that I've done consulting with, is a 24/7 operation. And I had an opportunity to meet with employees to ask them, what do you love working? Why do you love working for this company? What can the company improve upon to make you stay here? And what are some changes you would recommend for the company? So taking all that raw data and creating a report for the leaders of the companies, shared some information that they didn't want to hear, but I had to share it, because if they truly, truly wanted the culture that they desired, change had to occur. So that was a challenge within itself with some key leaders, but some was so open to receiving the information. They said, okay, Geree, I'm so glad you shared this information. Now we need for you to take us a step further. How do we effectuate, getting that desired culture that we're looking for? And so I did that. I had an opportunity to chart out some best practices. I had an opportunity to infuse some training and development at all different levels. And I had to continue to work with this company for 6 months to make sure that they were up and operating based on the principles that they established during that whole process.
Oh my gosh. I can only imagine that there may have been times where you have, gotten with a potential employer to work with, and you look at the culture that they have and just say, that's not good, because if you don't have that buy-in from senior leadership, right? Like you can talk the talk all you want, but I think and I know, as soon as you go in and you really get in deep, you can see it like black and white.
Absolutely.
If there is not that alignment, you're like, okay, I'm out.
That's right. I tell you, a company that I did consulting with, and unbeknownst to me, I accepted the contract. And when I got in there, it was a plethora of things that were not done. There were some things that were on the unethical side, like following policies and procedures, no compensation structure in place. And I'm asking the leader, what's going on? You were a PE, you were in a PEO organization, and my goal is to pull you out of it. But when I pull you out of it, there's nothing in place. I said, you don't have anything robust in place. And my ultimate goal was to get it in place. But there was some hesitation, there were some reservations in regards to it. And so my concerns were, if I could not effectuate what I needed to on my end, safeguarding, the company's assets from liabilities, it would have not been a win-win for me. And so I decided to, pull out from working with that organization, because I just saw too many issues. Employees were leaving. Attrition rate was so high. I mean, the turnover was just astronomical. The sooner you get employees in, the sooner they leave. It was just a revolving door. And so I didn't feel defeated, but I felt that the culture did not align with my personal values, and I just could not stay there.
Yeah, I totally get that. And at the end of the day, I think that's absolutely the right call to make. I'm sure it's hard to walk away from, because, the part in our heart that wants to be the helper, that wants to be able to make a difference, but then you can see that situation and say, yeah, that's way
Yes.
that divide, right, is just way too much to be able to bridge. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell the viewers a little bit about, the journey that you've had is so impressive and so great. And I can only imagine all of the kind of internal obstacles that you have had to push through, confidence, maybe imposter syndrome, or self-worth and self-esteem. Tell us a little bit about what you've had to really push through over the years to get to the point where you are at today.
Absolutely. So I reflect back on one employer that I worked for back in the 90s. And this is where, I had to decide work-life balance. I had to think about, my stress level. I had to think about my health. And when you work for an employer where they have policies in place, but they don't follow them, and you address them accordingly. And then there's the pushback, and then it becomes a domino effect. Here's what you're saying, here's what I see, and here's what's happening. And when the company is not aligning itself to do what's right, or I shouldn't say the company, the leader or the senior leadership team, I felt that I was just there as a body and being called on when needed. And that truly, truly, I felt devalued me as an up and rising HR professional. And I will say that stress was heavy on me, and I had to decide that, you know what, either you're going to stay here and deal with that, or you're going to move on and be valued somewhere else. And so I chose to leave that company because they failed to, respect and value the Office of Human Resources.
Yeah.
And it was important to me. One, I didn't want to compromise my standard. I was not going to do things that I know would come back and present ramifications, for me. And so I submitted my resignation. The right opportunity presented itself. And like I said, that was early in my career, probably back in 90. I was working for a nonprofit. And I said, enough is enough. I was coming home stressed, had headaches. And I'm like, my goodness, why can't this leadership team, comply? And they just didn't want to. They wanted things their way. Things were black and white. They deviated from it. And I just could not continue to try and defend and share with employees, why this is happening, because that was just not the best way to do it. And so when I resigned, they had an influx of people that left. And I ascertained that because people started calling me and sharing it. And the interesting thing, this particular organization had an EEOC filed charge against them, and I was called. And so I had to share some information. I had to testify. Thank God I kept copious notes. And from that, this particular employee won their case because of, the initial allegations of an employee working in a hostile environment. So it was a domino effect. Yeah. And I'm so glad that I left when I left.
Yeah, that is so fascinating because I talk to so many people who, are in similar situations like that. And they really truly believe that there's not a grass is greener on the other side, right? They're like, oh, it's like that everywhere. And it's not, and it's not ever going to change until you do something like you did, right? You have to be willing to take that stand. And I think that takes a lot of courage. And I think that takes, just a lot of strength to be able to say, no, I am not going to stand for this. And so, building that level of confidence and courage to be able to walk away is big thing. So, I think that really helps set your stage in your own personal growth.
Absolutely. And I will say to other HR professionals, never compromise your standard. And I know oftentimes we think about our livelihood, but what I will say on that note, always have your network bank open and available to be able to pick up the phone to call someone, bounce information off on, let your network of individuals know that you're looking for another job opportunity. Because if individuals see where they're stressed, they're going home, like I did, I took work home, get up early in the morning, go back to work early in the morning, leave late at night, it's not healthy. No. Stress kills. HR professionals are business partners, and that is exactly what it is. We're there to be our internal stakeholder to our stakeholders, as well as our external stakeholders. And we're there to have a seat at the table, sharing best practices, because we are solution focused, and we have to make sure that they understand the dynamics of the Office of Human Resources and our ultimate goal for being there. So if anyone is having an intricate time trying to present themselves from a diplomacy standpoint, dealing with things that they know is unethical, that's a violation of the law, violation of policy, you have that conversation with that leader. If the leader is part of that, you offer some recommendations. You let that leader know, and you can't be apprehensive because you're a professional, but you have to let that leader know that based on where you are, you're being transparent. You can't compromise your integrity, your standard, because you're doing what's right. You're trying to protect assets from liabilities. And by sharing that and then giving them some more substance to that, if they hear that and they receive it, they should apologize. If not, then you should know during that instance that that is not the place for you, and go find something else. But it goes back to networking. Make sure that you're networking, you're attending HR events, that you are going places to help you professionally develop yourself further, so that you can tap into additional individuals to help you get to where you're trying to go.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, actually, when it comes to, you see that there's an issue and a problem within the organization. They're not following policies, or, there's an ethics issue. I love your recommendation to say, hey, present it, really go to them and say, hey, here's what I see. Here's what the problems are. Here's what I recommend. And if they stick their nose at it, then
Absolutely.
it's very clear at that point. But I think, so often, so many, who may struggle with confidence, who might feel, a little bit insecure when it comes to talking to the big leaders of the organization. It's a matter of like understanding your why. Right. And I think sometimes when we can get out of our own heads and get out of our own way, the why is really not so much about ourselves. The why is really for the greater good of the organization and employees with the organization. So when you can switch your mindset a little bit and say, no, I am doing this for them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if this organization says, no, we're going to continue to not follow policies, then you have your answer, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, very good. I love it. Okay. So I know that you are, an entrepreneur now, but I'm really curious when it comes to coaching. As a coach myself, what has been your experience in organizations with coaching, leadership coaching, employee coaching? How have you seen that evolve over the years, and where do you see it going?
Great question. Every company should have a leadership development program. They should also have a succession plan, and they should also have a mentor-mentee program. With all three, you can ensure that you have the right people in place to perform their jobs effectively and efficiently. From a leadership development standpoint, if there are individuals, and let me just rewind, before I go to the leadership development piece, there should be a program, training and development program in place for individuals with performance deficiencies. I truly believe in the coaching aspect. It's not a aha, I got you, but as a supervisor, here's some things where I see you need to improve upon, and here are the reasons why. When you have that two-way communication with an employee or employees that present performance deficiencies, you will get a bang for your buck or return on your investment, because you are letting that employee know that you are a great employee, but based on my observation of the past 90 days, here are the mistakes that you've made, and this is what I'd like to see you do over the next 30 days. And you line out for them action item steps for them to make the improvements. And you check on them periodically to make sure that they're improving. If not, then that supervisor will need to recommend a performance improvement plan, because that position may not be the good fit for them. And so it's not that you're shooting them out the front door, but you're giving them an opportunity. I think every employer should have a program in place through their training and development department to ensure that every employee is being successful. Along that same line, because we know that the older people are retiring, so you need to have people in place through succession planning that can take an individual's job. So I've even helped a couple of companies create a succession plan program. It's so important to identify individuals but there must be a criteria to do that, because one, you don't want any employees to feel neglected or feel they're being mistreated or left out, or it can pose a problem with regards to law violations. And so with that criteria in place, it really, really hones in on the companies trying to do the right thing to ensure they're identifying the right people to put in the succession planning program. Along that same line, mentor-mentee programs. You have some employees who wish to become a supervisor or manager. Well, what is in place to ensure that they possess the skills to do that? So pairing mentees up with mentors being senior leaders, meeting with them on a weekly basis, having conversations with them about goal setting. What are their objectives? What are they trying to accomplish over the next 6 months? Helping them identify opportunities to help them excel, professionally and in their current role, and also, shadow, that supervisor or that manager or that senior leader to see exactly what they do day in and day out. Of course, some things they can't be privy to because they're confidential, but at least have a charted out mentor-mentee program for them to follow and share the expectations up front. And then guess what? They'll graduate from that program, either 90 days or 6 months down the road, and you can give them a certificate to say that they've gone through this program and they're ready to take on additional responsibilities at the supervisor or manager level.
Yeah, I've heard so much research on that too, around the success rates of it, in terms of turnover after 90 days. It's significant. So, I mean, even if you're in a smaller organization, for those watching, but if you're in a smaller organization, there is still possibility to create something within your organization that's a little bit more bite-sized, but still could have a tremendous bang for the buck. So I love that, Geree. Very, very cool. So last question I have, you kind of already answered it a little bit earlier, but it is, what advice would you give the woman who is watching this right now and seeing you as an inspiration and saying, wow, like, look at all that she's done, where she's been, where she's going? What kind of advice would you give to the fellow woman of HR out there?
Great question. First and foremost, I would tell every HR professional to pause, relax, relay, release. Think about where you are right now. Are you happy with where you are? Think about, where do you want to be 5 years from now? And when we think about it, we need to put it to action by putting it in writing. That's the first thing. Put it in writing, because you can always go back and reflect on it. But with writing it down, you have to establish goals. You have to establish SMART goals. You have to make sure that you are researching, you are reaching out to individuals to ask questions as it relates to where you're trying to go. Never pigeonhole yourself where you are. If you know that you're wanting to be a VP of Human Resources, or you want to be a Chief Human Resources Officer, start reaching out to individuals in those positions and ask them to be your mentor, because I think it's important to have a mentor, because to get to where you're trying to go, where you've never been, you need someone to help you get there. And so be cognizant of that. Do your reading. I think everyone needs to do their homework by reading. We all can continue to be lifelong learners. So we all should be lifelong learners. We should never think that we know everything, because we don't. But be cognizant of the professional development piece. Seek training opportunities. Ask your employer if you will be allowed to go to trainings to help develop your skill set further, so that you can get to where you're trying to go.
Yeah. Being willing to raise your hand as much as you possibly can. I love that. And I love the idea of reaching out to people who are in the position that you would most want to have. You can find them through LinkedIn. There's, so many different places that you can go, maybe through, your local SHRM chapter, but definitely having that, I think, could be massive, because who knows, right? You could see the job title of Chief Human Resources Officer. You sit down with somebody, and into that conversation, you might be like, that's not for me.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Right.
And let me just say that everyone must do their research. And when I say do your research, if you see that prime job that you want to apply for, do your research on that company. You
Mm.
can either Google, you can Google information about the company, also comments about people that have worked there before. That will help give you some competitive edge with regards to what's going on internally with that company. Because certainly, everything is not positive. There are certainly some derogatory things, negative things that's happening in companies, but you have to ask yourself, with what you see on the World Wide Web, is that something that you can tackle in the Office of Human Resources, with a different vantage point going in? Or
Mhm.
will it be a challenge for you? And if it will be a challenge, you have to ask yourself, are you ready for that challenge? And are you apprehensive about taking on that challenge? If there's any kind of inkling in your spirit, then that's not the opportunity for you, because HR is always going to be on roller skates. We're going to always have to roll our sleeves up. We're going to always have a seat at the table. We're always going to be called upon to put out fires on the employee relations side, labor relations side, dealing with all kind of issues with hiring practices. So it's important to know all facets of human resources before you try and go up that trajectory ladder, becoming a VP or a Chief Human Resources Officer.
Yeah, I'm laughing at your analogy about the roller skates because I'm like, it is not a flat roller skating rink. I'm telling you that right now. Rather, it's probably like bumpy sidewalks and
Yes,
streets and all of that. It's going to be a wild ride. So, in
yes.
terms of, if there's anyone out there who has in their gut this dream of being an entrepreneur, do you have any advice for them?
Absolutely. Within my business, LCS Consulting Services, I help individuals with startup. So if you're interested in starting your own small business, because I told you, we may have this huge granular idea about the business that we want to start, but you got to start small. You have to make sure, one, you have a business plan developed. If you're trying to seek funding, one of the first things that they will ask you, where's your business plan? So you have to make sure that you know everything from that checkoff list and starting a business, that you need to do all of this before you get going. So for those individuals that are looking to become an entrepreneur, I would certainly say you can seek information from the Small Business Administration. They have a plethora of resources for you to get going on the do's and the don'ts, the legal aspect of what you need to do to get going to be considered a legitimate business, but also reaching out to individuals with businesses such as myself to find out, how do we get started? What are we doing? How do we pave the way? How are we being successful? Because I think it's important to know that there are many companies out there on the HR side, all do similar things, but they're all different and unique in their own way. And so everyone can glean from each other in regards to best practices, how their business is running, and how we can help each other in terms of a partnership.
Definitely. Definitely. It's like, the more that I've gotten involved in entrepreneurship, the more I've realized there is no competition out there.
No,
We are all friends and we're in this together, because the more
absolutely.
that you can kind of lock arms and really trade secrets and that sort of thing, the better it makes all of us.
Absolutely. I would say we're only in competition with ourselves.
Yeah,
And sometimes it can be so hard on ourselves, but the key is to be a successful entrepreneur. You have to put the work in every single day. You should be striving to do something for your startup business. If
hmm,
not, you're setting yourself up for failure.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, Geree, how can, if anyone watching this would love to be able to reach out to you to learn a little bit more about you and your business, can they get in touch with you?
Sure, great question. They can reach me by way of email, lcsconsultingservices.inc@gmail.com, or they can go to my website, lcsconsultingservices.com, and I have a section out there where they can submit information to me and I'll receive it, or they can call me on my mobile device, 904-651-2022.
Wonderful. Well, we will put some of this contact information in the notes for the episode. So don't worry about having to memorize that, everybody.
Okay.
All right. Well, Geree, thank you so much for this
You're
conversation.
welcome.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
In closing, I want to say thank you so much for having me. I have a passion for people. And for those individuals that, you're uncertain with regards to your career progression and you're vacillating back and forth, there is something in the inside of you that's pricking you to do what you love to do. And I would tell you, glean in on, that conscious, because in the end, you want to do what's right. You want to do first and foremost what makes you happy. And so with that being said, I pride myself again on helping others be successful. And if I can be of any assistance to anyone, please do not hesitate to reach out, because I am up all the time. I am constantly striving to help others get to the level where they're trying to go, and that is to be successful in a position where they can retire from, be it entrepreneur or in a company where they can grow and prosper and make an impact.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I agree so much. That nagging voice is our conscience. So when we ignore it, it only just continues to fester. So I absolutely love
Absolutely.
that. All right,
Yes.
Geree. Well, thank you so much for
You're
your time
welcome.
today. All
You're
right.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh my gosh. That was such an amazing interview. The interviews that I've been having on this program are just getting better and better. And I'm so thankful. Geree, thank you so much for that conversation. I love being able to do something that inspires me, that I get to talk to women who really are an inspiration. And that was you, Geree. That was such a fantastic conversation. So I wrote down while I was watching this back, and I wrote down what I would call 6 inspiring words of wisdom from Geree Jackson. So the first one that Geree had said is create smart goals. We should all have goals and not just do the laundry and go to the grocery store. We should all have something that we're inspiring to. Having something to aspire to makes you want to show up for yourself. It gives you something to really strive for and push for. So creating SMART goals is so important. Number 2, equally important, put it in writing. When we write it down, we make it official. When we make it official, we give structure around it. We give more of a kind of a why behind it, right? It's not just kind of pie in the sky, head in the clouds. It's really like, this is important to me and I am going to push through this. And having it in writing is the first really big step other than the SMART goals. Number 3, research your dream job. So I really loved what she said. It's like, okay, so research it, find out what do other people love about working there, and then really be honest with yourself around what do you love? What would you love? What is going to be the work environment that you're going to love the most? And then ask yourself, do the 2 align? And if the 2 align, now you're talking. Now you have something to go towards. I think that research is so, so valuable. And then the next one, 4, 5, is reach out. So reach out is such a great reminder that when you see what it is you would want, right? That dream job at the dream company, reach out. You would be you're going to be surprised to realize that a lot of people really love the opportunity to mentor. They love the opportunity to connect with you and learn how they might be able to support you more than I think we realize. And so by reaching out, it gives you this opportunity to see the possibility, to see the work that goes into it, and to know that it's going to be okay. And that's why earlier at the beginning of the program, I was talking about imposter syndrome. And I think imposter syndrome is really just that. It's because we get in our heads around where we're not at yet. And so because we get in our heads, we cause ourselves a lot of doubt and a lot of worry and a lot of unnecessary drama. So the key with imposter syndrome is to just become so present as soon as you catch it and become aware of it and really allow it to be there, because it's going to pass. And at the end of the day, you get to choose what you believe. You get to choose. So I just love that. And so reach out was the next one. Second to last one is never pigeonhole yourself. Never get to the point in your life where you're settling. And I think so many of us do. There's so many areas of our lives, there have been in mine, and I know in so many others, where we settle. And so never pigeonhole yourself is such a great reminder of that. It's such a great reminder. You can do better. You can choose better. At any time, you can choose to change. But I think that choice of making a change is going to cause us to feel uncomfortable. It's going to cause us to feel maybe that imposter syndrome. It's going to cause us to feel things that we don't necessarily want to feel. So we don't do it. We end up kind of in a situation that we're not fully happy about. And then the last one that I think is so incredible is be a lifelong learner. Lifelong learning is so valuable, I think, in our lives, to continue to want to grow, to continue to want to expand, to continue to want to really find your way to the best of yourself. And the only way that we're going to get there is by learning. The only way we're going to get there is by growing. So be a lifelong learner is such an amazing piece of advice. So Geree, thank you so much again for the conversation. Thank you for just your beautifully inspired words. So with that, I want to end by inviting you that if you struggle with imposter syndrome, I have 5 tips that I have put together that will help you really learn how to break free from your imposter syndrome and rise above it. So you can really start to become the person that you most want to be able to not allow imposter syndrome to control you. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I would love to set up a one-on-one with you. And then the other thing I have coming up in a couple of weeks, I'm going to put out an Eventbrite a little bit later today, but I have a webinar that I'm going to be doing that will be the 5 tips to help you break free from burnout or break free from imposter syndrome and be able to rise above it so you can finally be the person you want to be. So look out for that. If you're not interested in the one-on-one, totally get it. So you got 2 different options to choose from. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today on my very favorite interview so far. And I hope that you have just a wonderful rest of your day. All right. Bye now.